concept. So the fact that we flew over the city for 3 endless hours, just looking for a possible location for the movie, gave me a vision of where we were going to set our story.
The thing that I remember the most vividly was that he was interested in portraying Los Angeles in a completely different way than we had ever seen it before, and that it was to be an intricate part of the story in terms of all of the bits and pieces of places and spaces that the different characters of this movie occupied, and how they all fit together to be a portrait of Los Angeles that is one that we were not familiar with.
One side of the story is the city, Los Angeles, and the other side is the conflict, or relationship between Macaulay and Hannah. It looks in a way like one story explains the other, and the two stories really run parallel. And maybe Michael Mann's idea to choose these two characters to explain Los Angeles, and vice versa.
We would go around the city and shoot photographs of things, not necessarily a location, but it could be a crucifix, it could be an old weird restaurant, it could be, but something that had a piece or an idea that might contribute to each of the scenes.
And most of the time there's a huge room with a number of photographs. Some of them belong to the scouting of the movie, so they are very specific shots to describe a scene. Some others are just a collection of images.
And all around us on the walls, Dante and Michael had put inspiration, visual inspirations, and they were just incredible pieces of still photography that they were using both for composition and for color. And I could see already that the palette was cool. It was very blue and very gray.
There's this moment in Macaulay's life in which he walks in his house, he drops his gun on a glass table, and he's entirely alone. And then he stands by the window and you see the ocean, the flat ocean outside, and it's night. We had to gel all the windows in a very selected color. It was not too colorful, not too, we had an amount of green, an amount of blue. And the combination of this worked fine with that particular moment. Inside, Dean Macaulay said there's an emotional, lonely factor.
There were something like 106 locations and sets, so it was quite a lot. Even though there was a style to the movie, each of these places was extremely real and believable and contributed to each of the characters in terms of telling us who they were. You wouldn't be fascinated with the characters if it was all about making it stylish. It's all about reinforcing those characters and putting them in a world that they can exist in.
We found a place where there was a legal cockfighting area that was then changed for the movie into a pit bull fight where you find a chop shop. And those are real environments. I mean, Michael is a director who wants to take from the reality and bring that into his film rather than do something that is imaginary. When we were shooting the sequence that involved the robbery of the armored truck and then the aftermath with the death, I mean, the people who were actually there, extras on the set, were true detectives, were true investigative forensic technicians. So you're dealing with people who really know how to do their job, and that brings a level of reality to a scene that otherwise you wouldn't get.
The experience of being on that set for any director, any actor, was electric. And so there's a very collegial atmosphere among the actors and myself. It was almost like a repertory company.
Okay, we're gonna have to take them in a car. Wait till they are all in. Get clean shots. Watch your background.
The main heist and the shootout were a big challenge. We were only allowed to shoot on Saturdays and Sundays. Every weekend we'd have to pull in there, get everything set up, and then pull out of that sequence on Sunday. So you're breaking it up over a series of weekends, which I think is always challenging because you have to come back and now recreate what you were doing a week ago.
The gunfire downtown was truly horrifying sounding. And because of the skyscrapers everywhere, it was just deafening, and it would hang in the sky for maybe like 8 or 10 seconds.
We used 800 to 1,000 rounds per take when we had the cops and our criminals going at each other. I mean, it was quite an amazing sound.
In what we do, we replace everything. In movies, every sound you hear is there for a reason.
So we were mixing in 3 stages simultaneously. And the pre-dubs of all the effects for that reel with all the gunshots came to the stage, and Michael said, "That's not the gunshot."
And everybody was in shock. He said, "How can you not, what don't you like about it?" And I knew what he didn't like about it because I was on location, was that it was horrifying sounding. So the big gun shootout that you hear in the movie is all production sound.
Nothing artificial or could come close to delivering the fear of the sound that the full load made moving through those automatic weapons, and the way the sound ricocheted off the walls of the buildings of an empty downtown. You couldn't manufacture the original sound, and it was quite extraordinary. After I shot the film, there was a desire to release it early because it was an accelerated post. The editing was really important, and I worked with one of my most important artistic and collaborators, and Dov Honig, my editor. And that's a very important relationship. This is pre-digital editing, so we had an army of people. And it was a 24/7 operation. People were coming in on various different shifts, and it was wild. It was and it was a very intense community and kind of a really shared experience with all those people who were working at the same time. You really do get the sense that we were in the trenches together.
You can't separate the images from the sounds in Michael's movies, and you can't think of the bank heist in Heat without hearing that incredible percussive piece. He has a really very, very open mind as far as music goes. He's a real sonic explorer when it comes to that.
The score was so modern, so interesting. It was such a brave, artistic score.
The thing that came from the first meeting that I thought was an important component to the whole process was I said, Michael, I think the thing that I want to do is have a budget to create a series of experiments. And experiments that were impressions of the film, but weren't exact cues. So what I did was experiment with percussion, experiment with guitar textures, with homemade instruments, with steel cello and strange combinations of sounds and sonorities. So then when it came to the point of actually composing for the movie, I had all of these sound experiments that I was able to share with Michael, and we were able to have something tactile in which to talk about.
Doing Heat was very different because when I was in a different world, and I was in many different worlds, I wanted something that would appear to be eclectic.
Michael Mann brought up Glenn Branca, and Glenn is a composer that uses wonderful, sort of, he may have like 15, 20 guitars on stage playing detuned, sort of rhythmic strumming that after a while turns into these wonderful sort of ghost-like melodies that don't really exist, but they're there. But the idea of using multiple amounts of guitars, a guitar orchestra, was a very, very compelling idea.
There's a long tradition, and there's great precedent for Michael Mann using quite obscure avant-garde music in a lot of his movies and TV shows. I mean, the music is almost as much of a character as some of the actors.
Beatty! Beatty!
There are only 2 parts in Heat where Al Pacino and Robert De Niro meet up, and both times they use my music as the background. The first time they use a cover of a Joy Division song, Do Dawn Fades, that I did. And then the ending, that's when God Moving Over the Face of the Waters comes in. And they worked so well. On the surface of it, they shouldn't have worked. They weren't conventional choices, musically speaking, but they ended up reinforcing the narrative in such a strong way.
The end just kills me. It's like that's the love story, right? It's like the only one that could really understand Al's character, Bob's character, and that it's finding the poetry in that and not kind of stopping at the image. It's like, well, what is actually under Chino's need to chase this guy? Well, it's like, it's his twin. That's what he could have been, or whatever, however you want to say it, but it's like the longing is so deep.
The thing about Neil and Hannah, which is similar, is that both men are